Mr. President,
Senator from Oklahoma.
it's unanimous consent at the conclusion of my remarks that my friend from Iowa, Senator Grassley, be recognized.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I don't know how, but a lot of the people back home have got in their heads that defending America is a complicated issue. And you know, it's a kind of issue that they think is going to have to be decided in Washington by a lot of smart people and all that, but nothing can be further from the truth. The main thing that we have, the reality is that defending America is just common sense. It's called priority, something we didn't have in the last administration. And every American citizen needs to be responsible for our own national security. So I'm going to be coming here each week to outline the common sense for our common defense. And we are working out here in Washington for families back home. Now, today I'll talk about how we face an urgency in funding our national defense. It's very simple, and again, it's common sense. Without action to exempt the military from sequestration or reach a budget agreement, we'll have to once again face the devastating cuts of the Budget Control Act in our military. You know, we could handle it in other areas, and I'm very supportive of it, but not in the military at this particular time. And I'll tell you why. We know what the result will be. We saw it during the Obama administration. Without sufficient, sustained, and predictable funding, we'll squander the progress the military has made over the past 2 years, which is improved readiness, increased procurement for critical capabilities, and investment in future technologies. This is just in the past 2 years. We need to continue to make progress. We also need to implement the National Defense Strategy. The Trump administration's National Defense Strategy correctly prioritized strategic competition, and that's with China and Russia. But to be effective, strategies are going to have to be matched with resources. Put this chart up, not that one, the next one, the National Defense Strategy Commission. Now, by the way, that's this document right here, the National Defense Strategy Commission. This is put together by a number of the very top people chosen by Democrats and Republicans. In fact, Senator John Kyle was a member of this when he was not in the Senate, and he and I will be debating this or be talking about this and complimenting each other on this after this. This will be tomorrow. But this right here, this chart we're looking at now, just to give me an idea of what is happening with some of the other countries, we have China, and they're actually increasing they're passing us up in terms of our number of ships. And this is true with everything else. It looks like they pass us up in about 2023. And so, you know, we're kind of used in this country to be having the very best of everything ever since World War II. We thought that was our mission. Now, put up the other one that said, put it bluntly. Yeah, this is a quote out of this document that we have right here that has been so brilliantly described by so many people. It says that putting it bluntly, the U.S. military could lose the next state versus state war if it fights. Now, these are the top military people and non-military people in our society who conducted the study that has been heralded as the most accurate study by all parties having to do with our nation's defense. Now, at a minimum, next year's defense budget should at least be $733 billion. And that's a floor, not a ceiling. And that represents, I have to say, a no-growth budget, because we went from fiscal year 3 years ago, 18, to $700 billion, and then 2019, in fiscal year 19, went to 7,016, and then this would be actually going up to 73. Now, if that happens, do the math, that's an increase of 2.1%, which is not even a growth. It's a no-growth budget. And I have to say that both General Dunford, Secretary Mattis, and the rest of them have called for fully implementing the National Defense Strategy, which would require between 3 and 5% of real growth. On both sides of the aisle, we have some individuals that are advocating for cutting in defense spending because of the increased deficit. You know, I'm concerned about the increased deficit, but we also have to have this priority. We have to have America catch up. We're not used to having to catch up defense-wise, but we are now. Defense spending is not a primary reason for our increased debt. We could eliminate the entire Pentagon budget and the deficit would actually grow. And here's why. Over the past 10 years, our national debt has grown 86%. During the same time, mandatory spending has grown 41%. And all that time, defense spending has been cut by 3%. I said cut by 3%. Meanwhile, constant dollar defense spending dropped some $200 billion between the years of 2010 and 2015. That's an amount of dropping in 2010. The total budget was $794 billion in 2015. 5 years later, it dropped to $586 billion. That's a drop of $200 billion. And in percentage of terms, that it's a 24-hour drop. This hasn't happened since the end of the Korean War. So we've got to do something about the growing debt, but the only way we can actually curtail it is to address the growth in mandatory spending. There are a lot of programs in mandatory spending that could be cut and would have to do it. Because, if you cut the entire defense budget out, it would not reduce or eliminate the debt. So the mandatory programs are a growth of highs, and a debt is held by the American people has correspondingly increased. If we don't do something about this, interest on the debt will surpass defense spending by the fiscal year 2023. We can see right here, this is the gray line here. This is how the net increase in spending compared to the total spending of non-defense. It passes non-defense in 2023. So anyway, the Obama administration viewed the world as they wanted to see it, not as it was. The assumption that Russia is a strategic partner was and is fundamentally flawed and profoundly misguided. It has cost us dearly. So today we're faced with the reality that those decisions not only weakened our national security by sacrificing our military advantages over Russia, but it will be costly to recoup the capabilities that President Obama has chosen to cut with his lack of priorities for the military. So that's a reality, and I think this president has done a good job in outlining who our peer competitors are, because we are talking about countries that have things that are better than we have. Tomorrow we're going to be talking in some detail about that. When the military is forced to reduce spending, it's going to have to take trade-offs between lowering readiness, reducing force structure, and just not modernizing. In this case, we suffered through all three of those in the last administration. In the meantime, our adversaries, Russia and China, have increased their own military spending and focused on force structure and modernization. The size of the Chinese Navy, that's the one that we held up erroneously, I'm going to remind you. The size of the Chinese Navy will soon surpass the United States Navy. There it is right there. It shows we're almost ready for those lines to cross at 2018. It's going to be 2022. Over the 2000 and 2030 timeframe, the U.S. Navy would grow at an average rate of about one ship every 2 years, while the Chinese Navy is growing more than 20 times faster at an average rate of about 10 ships annually. And the quality and capability of those ships is increasing as well. So as chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, I see no bigger imperative than this to fully fund our defense and fully implement the national defense strategy. You know, when I talk to people out in the real world, I'm talking about going out to Oklahoma, talking to groups of people, and they find out that it was true ever since World War II that we have had the occasion of increasing, of being number one in all areas of our equipment, such as artillery and other things. They're shocked to find out that the Chinese and the Russians actually have equipment that's better than us. We'll be specifically talking about this tomorrow. With that, I thank my friend from Iowa, and we'll yield the floor.